All right, guys, sorry, my computer decided to reboot.
So with like global reference, how would that work for where, like if you add just a global reference on like PC apps, how would that work?
If I would ask for a global reference on a piece of paper. What's that? It's an awesome question. It's me making sure that I am interpreting what you're asking. So it's not a me thing, it's a me thing. If you give me an example.
So like if you were looking at it right there, what would you like? What would you like?
Gotcha. No, that's super good. So, and help guide my ship. If this is what you're asking, let me keep going. If it's not, throw your pin in. On the test, we have established what global means. And that's in here, right? Because we know this is the front of class and that's the back of class, anterior, posterior, frontal. We know if this is the front and the back, this has to be in the side to the side, sagittal. And then we all know the top and the bottom, right? So any exam question has to have the context of global reference, you're facing the projection board, or you're facing the back wall. You're laying down on the floor facing the ceiling. You're facing the side of class. Because once I set those rules, then you know what global means because we all have the same reference. Make sense? Awesome. Good question. So in other words, if you're looking at your book and the person is here, that doesn't mean he's laying down, right? If he's standing up, you either know he's standing up or you make the book stand up.
So like imagine it when he's standing right there.
What's that?
So you like imagine it if he's standing right there.
But I'm going to give you that information. Yeah, there's never going to be a question, and if I do make that mistake, call me on it, where you won't have context of where the person is standing. You have to. Yeah, because I can't just say, let's use an example to illustrate the really good question. A person is standing in 153B and starts doing jumping jacks. Now we could probably eliminate transverse, but I don't know. What if the person's here, or what if the person's there, right? So you have to have that context of where they are in the class to be able to answer the global reference. Really, really good question. And that's a great example of a clarification. You know what they mean. It's just let's clarify how to apply it. Good.
So what you're saying is if you don't give context of where they're facing, then you want to explain our
Good question. I'm always going to give you context. Because even if it's you like, dear 7-ounce, 8-pound, 7-ounce baby Jesus, please help this be a helpful analogy and not a hurtful analogy. Right? I mean, like, there's always ways to make it weird, okay? So even if it was local, I'm still going to explain where you're at or what you're looking at or context. I'll do things like you're in anatomical position and you're facing the sidewall. You're laying down on the floor in anatomical position. Like, I'm always going to try to give you context so there's no misunderstanding of any possible weird things. Now, remember, and I'm trying to give you guys some advantage of coming to class. If I give you context, you're in anatomical position, you're facing the back of class. You're in anatomical position, and you're facing the front of class. If I don't differentiate between a global and a local question, that means they're the same. Does that make sense? So it doesn't matter, it's irrelevant. Sometimes global and local you can see the same thing. So in those instances, I don't have to say, what's the global reference, what's the local reference? It's the same answer. Make sense? No problem.
Slightly understand it as an understanding of the Lord's framework, but I don't know.
I'm with you. I'm with you. All right, let's think of it like this. If we had a that's a really good, that is another great example of clarification. And so what I'm going to try to do is, come on, UL Internet.
One time. Come on.
Okay, I think I have an analogy that will really, no, not life. Life. All right, check this out. Perfect. Even better. Even better. Okay, can everybody see the merry-go-round on the right side, okay? We understand that that's going to spin in transverse plane, okay? Now remember, we have global, fixed, everybody sees references, and then we have local. What I see may not be what everybody else sees, okay? So this is what I want you to imagine. Imagine this pipe represents this rung that's going into the axis of rotation. Just one rung, all right? Now, when the merry-go-round spins, okay, this pipe represents this top part, like where you put your hand, right? When the merry-go-round spins, this rung is going to do this. Okay? We're good? Right? The rung is going to do this. That rung could be also looked at as my shoulder when I'm doing snow angels, doing this in the transverse plane. Because even though it's my frontal, you guys would be seeing my arms spin the same way you'd see that metal piece spin on the merry-go-round. Cool?
Is that because she's learning from the ground?
Exactly. Absolutely. Nothing changes from her joints. Her joints are like, dude, I'm still doing the same thing. But our view of what's happening changes. How would be her frontal? Sure. Because this, from her perspective, is the exact same as this from her perspective.
Aren't the joints still rotating in her shoulder?
They were rotating the same here. Let me try to do it better. I'm getting old, okay? Forgive me. Ab, add, ab, add, ab, add. Oh Lord, ab, add, ab, add, ab, add, ab, 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 ab. It's the same thing. Make sense? Cool? Kelly Clarkson. Remember, perspective isn't meant to make things complicated. It's actually meant to make things simpler once we start getting into illusions and why things are called the way they are and why certain joint motions might look a certain way. I still have students that sometimes when we get into more detailed stuff, they want to say, this is ab and adduction of my elbow. because they're like, it's going away from a midline or it's going to a midline. You know, because they want to look at it globally and not locally. And so by defining and working on these concepts, it's really going to help us to see which is sometimes more difficult to see. Yes, ma'am?
Would you ask us about vocab, like center and mass, translation,
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If it's in Unit 1, and especially if I talked about it, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm going to make up words too, guys. I'm telling you, on the answer choices, like some of them are going to sound like very delicious, but I totally made them up. So know what we called them. Know the verbiage that we used in class. Make sure it's still working. Yep. Remember, this open, open. So, flexion, flexion. So this is my new position. Open, open. Flexion, extension, flexion, extension. So that would be like, that'd be like this. Yeah, I think I got it right. That'd be like this. Flexion, extension, flexion, extension. Specifically my left. Left hip flexion, left hip extension, left hip flexion, left hip extension. How about them Saints, huh? Never had a doubt the whole game. I think like ER visits go up like 30% during football season. Any other questions? Yeah, what you got?
Okay, so you know when you said that an elevator moves up and down, it'll move up and down, so it's not really rotating about an axis.
Sure.
So is that like
The elevator itself, I'm not saying there's not like ears and other stuff, but just in terms of just the center mass of the elevator, just going up and down, we wouldn't say that it's moving in a plane. And I can illustrate that two different ways. One is planar movements are rotating about axes, right? But also, even if you wanted to associate linearity to planes, you would always have two options that are just as valid. So if I took this slinky box and I dropped it down, what would your, let's say I said you have to pick sagittal, frontal, or transverse. You have to pick one. Which one makes more sense to you? What would you say? If you had to pick sagittal, frontal, or transverse, you wouldn't say transverse, right? Because it's kind of good, but yeah, and half of the people would say, well, frontal too. Like it's going parallel with both the front wall and the side wall. And then if I shifted the box like this, half of the class would say transverse, but the other half of the class would say sagittal. It's another example of why we can't play that game. That it has to be spin. Now, once we spin it, that only gives us one option. Sagittal spin, frontal spin, transverse spin. Make sense? Good.
Can you do a refresher on internal and external rotation?
unit, you know you don't have to know those specific terms, like in terms of identifying the test. So on unit 1, I want you to know that like, I'm introducing you to something on unit 1 so that we could apply in unit 2, but I'm not gonna ask you to identify in unit 1. So in other words, on that last part, it's, hey, there's a lot of frontal plane movements that are called this and that. I'm not asking you to identify position or motion. I'm just introducing you so that you kind of learn those terms. So a test question could be, common transverse plane movements include, but I'm not going to ask you to like identify. Just want you to get those words into your vocabulary so that we can play with them.
Okay, so can we take a cartwheel for example? No, you don't have to do it. Okay, if we take a cartwheel for example, can we like,
So, right away, people are like, who are the athletic trainers?
I believe you. Okay. So if we take a cartwheel for example, can you ask us which plane, you know, we would have to know what from which angle, right? Because it would be different from everyone else's perspective.
We would, well, if I did it globally, all I would have to communicate is where am I facing and how did I cartwheel, right? So like if I was here and I cartwheeled to my right or to my left, that would be a global frontal, right? Now if I kept my head here, then it would be my center of mass's frontal as well.
Okay.
But that's why there's always like, because some people might do like a cartwheel like this, and then how do they see? And there's all, when you get into local, like there's a lot of different factors. So typically when I'm talking about like the whole body spinning or an object spinning, I love global references because then it doesn't matter. It's how is it spinning that we all agree on. Does that make sense? Because again, somebody could start here and then turn their head and do this, which I could totally do it, but I don't have my one-arm cartwheel shoes.
If we do that,
That's okay.
It's still in the frontal plane, or would it be?
Well, like if they did this, it would all be how they see it. So if they turn their head and did this, they would see sagittal spin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's going that way. Okay.
And so that's why I avoid those kind of questions.
Sure.
Because boy, you can talk, that's like saying the stadium sees, the coach sees, the player sees, and boy, everybody can see different stuff. And remember, I'm just trying to introduce you to these different views. You guys are gonna really develop and apply it more in grad school. I mean, I got you for 3 months. I just want to kind of teach you kind of how some of these things can work. And then you guys can, I'm arming you with your toolkit. And then you guys could take that toolkit and go build some really, really cool stuff when you know how to use those tools. Man, if I did do a cartwheel, how would I do that? I'm trying to think if I would use like my right hand or if I'd use my left hand. I'm left-handed, but I think I would use my right hand. Yeah, probably so. Y'all want to see if I can do it? What's that? My what? Oh, yeah. Watch. Yeah. And they're pumps. So let me pump them up. All right. Game on. All right, here we go. This might end up on one of those like fan star things, or whatever, like where the dude like kills himself. 46 years old, man. Somebody go get some ice. All right, how you do this again? You go.
I don't know.
You just gotta survive. All right, here we go. Do I run? Do I take a running start? No. All right, here we go. Yeah, me too. didn't blind people in the front, I should have tucked in my shirt. What?
Stretch a little bit, that's it.
Y'all, back, you're gonna say this too when you get older. Back in my day, I used to do the trick where you can hold your foot and then jump and do and my dad, I got whatever little bit of athletic ability that I had from my father. My father was a state champion in the triple jump, long jump, while smoking and drinking like Miller Lite. Like back in his day, like they didn't know any better, right? I mean, he's like 80 years old. And so my dad, and I've had friends corroborate this, but my dad used to be able, when he was in high school, he would be able to do this move where he would lay down, arms straight, and be able to press himself up. And I don't feel like dying today. So I've never been able to do that. And so who do I blame? Not myself. I blame my mother for watering down the gene pool, and not putting me in a position to be a better athlete. In loving jest, we tease a lot as a family. All right, guys, last chance. Any other questions before I go into the ice bath? We're good? Please get in the study groups. Please, 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 please.